Hi, my name is Alman Ainsworth. Thanks for watching another episode of APTV. Today I'm here with Alistair Kennedy in Father's office at QV in the Melbourne CBD, which is a pretty cool venue. Alistair is a liquor license specialist, and he's been doing this for 40 plus years. Yeah. We're going to talk to Alistair about what is a liquor license, how to get it, how to speed up the process, what are the biggest misunderstandings and mistakes often made when applying for it, and just liquor license explained for the layman terms.
Absolutely.
Liquor license explained in layman terms. Thanks, Alistair.
Thank you.
How long have you been working in the liquor license space here in Victoria?
I've been in the liquor industry 40 years, literally.
40 years?
40 years. Started
At
17
10?
and a half. 17 and a half. Started as a busboy in the first restaurant bar model that we really had in Melbourne, because this was very
Where
much
was that?
Cafe Neon in Park Street, South Melbourne. And those guys went on to do the Red Eagle Hotel in Albert Park and then the Botanical in Domain Road, South Yarra. They were my first bosses. And then I moved into the nightclub business for a long time. Music festivals, cafes, restaurants, and then even a noodle shop. And at some point there, I got sick of being asked to provide free advice, and I thought it's time I professionalised myself and went into the business.
And so what exactly is your profession?
How
would you describe your job?
I provide consultancy services to hospitality, so predominantly town planning and liquor licensing, but also marketing, social media and all that.
Oh, really?
As well.
Oh, good. Okay. So in that case, can you explain in layman terms,
Yes.
what is a liquor license, how do I get it, and how long does it take?
Okay. A liquor license gives you the right to sell and for people to consume alcohol on your premises. There's about 4 different varieties or categories of them. Essentially a restaurant, a bottle shop, and a couple of other licenses such as a general license, which traditionally was what a pub used as well. The prime asset of a general license is that you can sell liquor on and off the premises as well. So it's the most flexible license as well.
So I can sell you a bottle to take off, and I can sell you a glass to drink in.
Yeah, I can have a wine store, I can have a home delivery service, and I can have
common?
accommodation. Yeah, it is common, yeah. They're more difficult to obtain, particularly where you've got commercial zones abutting residential zones. But then I would say there's a very large category of what we'll call legacy licenses in Victoria, or in Australia as well. You know, pubs that have been there for 100 years that are still trading essentially off the same permissions from all those years ago.
So that license is rolling year on year for 100 years.
And the way in which they can be changed then attracts new licensing regimes. So the best thing to do is not try and change it in a sense, because once you introduce or want to apply for changes, then you're going to get input from residents and other stakeholders, councils and so on as well.
So if it's not broken, don't fix it.
I absolutely would say that, yes. A liquor license these days has a clear disclaimer on it, which simply says this is completely subject to planning permissions and laws.
So just back to the restaurant license is majority food consumed with alcohol.
75% of table space and activity, if you like, has to be for the consumption of food, yes.
Bottle shop is exactly what it sounds like. I could buy a bottle and
Packaged
leave.
liquor, yes.
And I can take it off premise.
That's right.
But I can't consume it on premise.
Generally not.
And then a general license is I can do whatever I want.
Yes.
Okay.
In essence.
And general licenses are difficult to get.
More difficult to get.
And
yes.
most of the time it's at 1 a.m.
Ordinary trading hours are normally about 11 or 12. 1 a.m. is an extension that you can go for, and that depends on, again, what you're abutting, where
But it's
you
relatively easy to get in the CBD.
Relatively easy, certainly in the CBD.
Yeah.
Yes. 3 a.m. was easy once upon a time, so was 7 a.m. I was part of the charge that led the 7 a.m. brigade, which was actually a big mistake, because rather than having 2 cycles of customer, they all came late and no one came early, so we did ourselves a disservice. There was a moratorium introduced by previous Labor governments in certain council areas to stop new 3 a.m. licence applications. That's been lifted, but now you have councils who are actively stating that they will fight these, every which way they can.
Have you seen any 3 a.m. liquor license been approved since that's been lifted?
Yes, I have. I think the best one in the CBD is Purple Pit, which is in the ANZ Gothic building underneath, Marco Tazzini's place. Very impressive.
And that's 3 a.m. liquor license?
Yeah, it's a 3 a.m. bar with food. I think it's a very modern, contemporary take on a 3 a.m. license.
Right.
And it's not what we used to call a vertical drinking establishment, which was ex-Lord Mayor Robert Doyle's disparaging description of nightclubs, and that is that you stand vertically and you imbibe liquor until you fall down, and that's all they are. We're more sophisticated now. We can sit down and order cocktails, get up and dance and come back. Apparently we're trusted to behave now.
Right. But someone who has a liquor license, they're responsible for the behavior of their customers while they're on premise?
Yes.
And even when they leave?
Yes, there are obviously amenity issues to be concerned about.
So if someone gets blind drunk on your premise, you can potentially get in trouble for that as a business proprietor.
You would remove them before then, and
correct. But if you
not the old-fashioned way of removing someone, which is just to push them out the door onto the pavement.
Right.
You make sure that they can get home as best you can, or that they have a companion, and so on. And there are all sorts of duties of care that we'd say that are owed to people.
So we got our 3 liquor licenses, typically to 1 a.m. 3 a.m. is a bit grey. Now, once you have your liquor license, how do you get it?
Your first stop is planning permissions, so you really need to apply for a planning permit if we're talking about a greenfield site, for example, or a site where permissions have lapsed, or where councils are claiming there have never been permissions. There are all sorts of tricks that go on. A planning permit would generally take between 4 and 6 months. You can apply for a liquor licence concurrently with that, but you're not going to be granted a liquor licence until you have, number one, the right to occupy the premises, and secondly, permission to trade, planning permission to trade.
So right to occupy means like a lease or an ownership?
Yeah.
Okay.
Generally a lease.
Right.
A licence to occupy generally doesn't wash.
So now once you get your planning permit, 4 to 6 months, is there any way that it could go quicker?
Yes, do the application properly. Understand what you're about and
So
make sure that your application is worded properly.
Yeah.
The less times you're asked for a request for further information, the better. Every time you get an RFI, you can add another month onto the whole process.
Wow.
It's not unusual at the moment for a simple restaurant cafe licence in an area such as Hobson's Bay, Williamstown, 7 months planning and licensing. And of course the great problem with this is if the tenant comes in on day one and 7 months later they can't trade, who's paying in that period? Is it all rent free? Whose cost is it? So,
and he can't apply for a planning permit without a license, without a lease?
Yeah, well, I suggested the landlord should do it because I think it's a great way, rather than landlords seeing planning permits as some kind of hindrance or obstruction, they are actually an asset, and you can go ahead because a planning permit, unlike a liquor license, automatically runs with the land. So it always belongs to the land, not to the landlord, but to the land. And as long, in very simple terms, as long as you commence that use within 2 years of the grant, it's there forever. Very unlikely to ever be revoked unless there was major malfeasance along the way. So in my view, a landlord, when either considering the next tenancy or starting something new or developing, should be considering the widest possible planning permit and at that point to provide the groundwork for the tenant to come in to either be transferred that liquor licence or apply for the liquor licence based on the existing planning permission. That'll cut 4 to 5 months out of that process immediately.
Yeah, it's very uncommon for landlords to apply for planning permits, but it's very common for landlords to wait around for planning permits when their tenant is not paying rent. So you're saying get your own planning permit before your tenant signs lease.
Absolutely, and in fact, I would urge landlords with a property portfolio to review these planning permits in each of their land holdings and say, okay, well look, this lease is running out in 12 months. If the planning permission here is only for a restaurant and cafe until 11 p.m. and now there's the opportunity to go for 3 a.m. particularly in the CBD, why don't I do it now? You don't even need to notify the tenant. It's not the tenant's business. And certainly if that planning permission is obtained, all of a sudden you've gilded that asset. You can turn around and say, okay, as part of a market review, part of a new term, look what I've just got for you.
Why is it so misunderstood?
I can't speak for landlords or tenants sometimes.
I'm not sure. You early enough. So now I got my planning permit, then what do? You
apply for the liquor license based on that planning permit.
The business owner applies to the liquor license, or can a landlord do that again?
A landlord can do that, but ultimately that would have to be transferred. Now the issues we have, the planning permit process is statutory. There are certain timelines and timeframes and so on. They don't really move unless you need to keep providing information because you haven't put your application in properly. Liquor licensing at the moment is unfortunately in a terrible mess. We've got situations where it's taken 13 weeks for Liquor Control Victoria to notify me that they've even received an application. that I've made on behalf of a tenant.
Is that being done purposely to slow down?
No, they're understaffed, and they were split from the gaming people as well. So there's now two different organisations again. There's been some recent press about it, well, from disgruntled stakeholders too.
Yeah.
But you would need to factor in, even to transfer a licence from one tenant to a new tenant or landlord to a tenant, you'd have to factor in 3 months at the moment as well.
To transfer an existing liquor licence?
Yeah, you'd have to.
So now I have a planning permit, I want to get a new liquor license. What should I expect my timeline to be in normal circumstances?
8 weeks.
Is it ever that quick?
Yes, it is that quick, yes.
You've seen 8 weeks happen?
Yeah, eight weeks is doable.
If you do it properly,
If the
accurately.
planning permit is absolutely on target, yes you can. Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
But that's from the date of application, not the date of our discussion. It's
Right.
literally when the form goes in.
Okay. So now once I have my liquor license, that liquor license is valid for 12 months usually?
The licence is valid really forever, unless it's revoked for some kind of misconduct.
But doesn't the license have a
has
date
to
on
be,
it?
there is a renewal fee due by the
Okay.
31st of December every year, yes.
And if I don't renew it on the 31st of December, what happens?
There is a grace period.
How long?
And the grace period is about 3 months for a tenant, a licensee tenant, and for a landlord who would make an application for reasons we'll come to soon, I would say 6 months, but I would never allow those timeframes to go that long because again we've got issues with communication with Liquor Control Victoria.
It's unnecessary waste of time. You
That's
can just
right.
be proactive about it.
Yes.
So if you have a venue where the tenant left, the liquor license stays with the venue?
No, so
Okay.
planning permit runs with the land,
Yes.
so we've got no problems with that. The liquor licence is personal to the entity that's applied for it. If that entity of that tenant does a runner or is evicted, the landlord can make an application for reversion back to the landlord, and that can happen in two ways. Either the landlord can hold that and trade using it, or there's another way where the landlord can it can be reverted to the landlord temporarily, and there's a condition on there that the landlord can't trade, but he effectively is holding it for the next tenant.
How long could he hold it for?
As long as it's paid up, indefinitely.
Yeah, I've seen that happen a few times.
Yes,
Because there's some historic liquor licenses
that's
that
right.
the landlord realized the value in and just made sure that that was maintained until the new
Yeah.
tenant came in.
I'm aware of one in Brunswick that's been in that situation for quite some time, but that landlord licensee has been urged to reopen and trade occasionally as well.
All right, that's
I
bizarre.
can't. Yeah, I know that is slightly bizarre, but I'm not sure why.
Right. Now, this the liquor license, it has to be attached to an entity or an individual?
Either
Or
partnership, company, individual,
or a trust?
unincorporated association, trust. Yes.
All right, so you don't have to put your neck on the line for these liquor licenses.
Somebody does, because you've got to satisfy a fitness and propriety test. You've got to be
Being that
fit and
you are
proper. That you've
responsible-
got to make declarations that you don't have criminal convictions, for example. You're required to declare your associates to ensure that you are not a front man for
Your
a
business
criminal
associates
organisation.
it's in that business, or
Family and other associations, yes.
do they want to know everyone you know?
If anybody that you know is going to exercise any control or management of that venue, of
Right,
that
okay,
licence,
that makes sense.
that's when you're required to.
Right.
And
Okay.
family members can be presumed to be associates, so that needs to be made very clear.
How long are these forms?
That's a very long form,
Oh God, I can never do it. I get distracted by page 2.
I know, and if you make a mistake, it's back again.
I go back to page 1. I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
When applying for a liquor license, what should you be aware of? Like how relevant are the residents in the area? How relevant are the open balconies or closed balconies or office buildings or schools? Like what exactly are the don't waste your time items?
Packaged liquor near schools, I would have thought, is something that we wouldn't be bothering with.
What about restaurant licenses?
Restaurant and cafe licences, they are encouraged. That's the licence that's encouraged by councils and liquor. It actually has a number of restrictions, so it's not a particularly good licence for resale. I always urge clients to apply for on-premises licences or general licences because they're much more flexible. General licence, in my view, is a real asset.
But they're very difficult to get.
They're not difficult. It's just you need to have your ducks in a row with your application.
So anyone could apply for a general license and likely would get it if they apply properly.
Depending on the objections, remember, in the planning process and the licensing process.
Melbourne CBD as an example.
You're less likely to have opposition here. You've got a pro-business council obviously here.
One of the biggest misconceptions in the market, that general license is understood to be virtually impossible to get. So you're saying that's not the case?
No, I'm currently...
And I'm a real estate agent.
Yes, correct.
And that's what you're saying.
I'm currently dealing with a general licence application in just off Clarendon Street in South Melbourne, the city of Port Phillip. The attitude of the city of Port Phillip in an area which is a commercial run zone, abutting a residential zone, has been entirely reasonable and pro-business. So I don't think we can make assumptions necessarily that general licences are impossible to obtain.
What are the best councils, in your opinion, to work with in Victoria when it comes to licences?
Melbourne City Council, definitely.
Have you seen improvements in the last couple of years?
No. One of the issues that we have with councils, and I speak from experience, specific experience, Melbourne City Council, Hobsons Bay Council, Stonington Council, is when you're dealing with a property that's been, as an example in Williamstown, where it's been a licensed restaurant, these premises, for over 30 years, and yet liquor control can't find the original liquor licence, and the council can't find the original planning permit. And the answer of both is, I'll just apply for a new one. Well, that's all very well and good, but 7 months later, my client is still waiting for her permissions.
And there's no penalties for delayed approvals, is there?
No, there isn't. No.
So it's a government.
Things to be very aware of no matter where you are: footpath dining, obviously, balconies, footpath dining, outdoor, they are problematic. There was a period there during COVID where everybody wanted to give you a parklet. You could park your ass on the street and do whatever you wanted to, but that's gone.
It's still happening though.
Yes, but the prices are going up and it's no longer as friendly as it used to be, that process.
So we're now at Father's office at QV.
Yes.
This balcony wraps around Swanson Street and what is this, little Lonsdale Street?
Yes.
What's the problem with this balcony? Like if I were to apply for a permit right now?
We're sitting beneath residents.
They're far away up in the sky.
But this creates a noise tunnel going straight up. That would be an issue. But what basically happens is, because there have been so many contested planning applications, in particular at VCAT, councils have sort of abrogated the initial role of assessing noise, amenity and car parking.
Like case law.
And all they do now is they say, okay, go off and hire an independent consultant who's an expert in that field, who's a VCAT accredited witness, if you like, and let them do all the mathematics and tell you whether it's okay. So an application that might take, as I said, 6 months, you can now add another $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 on top of that and further delay whilst all these consultants prepare their assessments.
Wow.
So that's problematic, particularly in areas with car parking, so obviously not the CBD, but wherever you have residents, that is the most problematic process of the lot.
And how about number of, like every liquor license has a pack on it, how many people you let inside the license? When is it too much? What's the most you ever won? The biggest liquor license?
800.
800 people?
Yeah, some time ago.
That's a business.
Yeah,
and so that's all to do with the toilets, right? And the size, exits?
Essentially, you're required to call in a building surveyor. The building surveyor looks at the licensed area, the back of house areas, and there is an established formula under the building codes for how many toilets and so on.
And the size and exits and all the rest of it.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow,
but you know, I come from the days of 3,000 capacity venues, which obviously don't exist anymore. I hope that we see, for example, in the Docklands, that if we can't get anything else right in the Docklands, we've got the TV studios right.
Yeah.
Perhaps we can put some entertainment down, large entertainment spaces, live music spaces and so on. That, you know, for example, where the Costco site is, that's a great opportunity there to locate an entertainment hub.
Nightclubs?
Oh, look, after a concerted campaign by one Lord Mayor and one Premier some years ago, we were almost run out of town. And I'm talking,
will ever come back?
I don't think they'll come back in that form of a large dance warehouse. They won't come back in the CBD. But I think that there are still opportunities in areas abutting train lines, you know, say for example from here to Footscray. Some of that Docklands area is a great idea too. Areas like Moorabbin near the airport. There are pockets where I think we could do that. There has to be transport, and there are obviously amenity issues too with all of these things.
My missus and I are often looking for nightclubs on Saturday nights, and there just isn't any.
You are not looking for them.
No, we're not.
Absolutely not.
I'm usually
Look,
asleep before the nightclub's open.
The biggest problem, the biggest enemy of nightclubs has been changing consumer taste.
Yeah, it's all on Tinder now.
Yeah, boy meets girl online. The cheap alcohol to preload before you go out means that people do a lot more house parties as well. Every bar has got DJs or Spotify or whatever it is as well. So nightclubs failed to keep pace. You know, originally we had the wow factor, the technology. If you look at, you know, the Lume exhibition that's down there at the convention centre, those sort of visuals, you know, add incredible sound, put Dolby Atmos and put this kind of visuals into entertainment spaces, maybe you'll get people prepared to pay again to walk in. But at the moment, you know, there was a great trend to music festivals, although that's plateauing now, I think, as well.
Yeah. Let's just come back.